Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. At first glance, Elliot Darnell was a nobody. A thin, almost fragile teenager, whose silhouette blended into the gray and noisy decor of the high school Roosevelt High School, an ordinary establishment lost in the heart of Brooklyn. His brown hair, tangled and unruly, fell over a forehead often furrowed with worry. His glasses, too large for his thin face, constantly slipped down his nose, like a fragile mask behind which he tried to hide. His clothes were out of fashion, a faded sweatshirt, baggy jeans that hung at his ankles, and sneakers worn from miles of walking. Everything about him seemed to say, "I'm not a bother, leave me alone." He always walked with his head down, his shoulders hunched, as if the weight of the world rested on his frail shoulders. The high school corridors, filled with boisterous laughter, huddled groups of friends, and young people searching for their identity, were hostile territory for him. There, the law of the strongest prevailed, unspoken and brutal. Every morning, as he walked through these walls, Elliot felt judgmental stares. Some students looked away, others offered barely concealed sniggers. But there were worse, those who attacked him. Every day, without fail, his shoulder was shoved on the stairs, his books were snatched from his hands, his things were thrown across the room as if they had no value. And there was that voice he recognized at first glance, a sarcastic and sour voice. "Get out of here, stringman." It was Troy Beckman, the quarterback of the American football team, tall, muscular, with a cruel smile and piercing eyes that always seemed to be looking for a new victim. Behind him, his accomplices, Mike Harlow and Darren Flint, two boys with confident gaits and mocking laughter, followed like hyenas ready to pounce. Elliot never said anything. He didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't defend himself. He gathered his things without a word, sometimes clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white. He endured it, day after day, as if this silent violence were his punishment, his burden to bear. He had no friends to rely on. Not a single ally to reach out to him in the jungle that was Roosevelt High. Not a voice to defend his trampled dignity. His world was a cold isolation, an emptiness he filled with books, dreams, and silences. And yet, every night after school, Elliot would disappear. When the bell rang to signal the end of classes at Roosevelt High School, the other students rushed to fast food restaurants, buses, or sports fields, their laughter floating in the air like foreign music. Elliot, meanwhile, walked alone in the shadows of the buildings, his bag slung over one shoulder, his eyes fixed on a goal that no one else suspected. He descended into the bowels of the New York subway, at a time when the trains rumbled like tired beasts. Sitting in a corner of the car, he observed the world in silence, the closed faces, the hurried bodies, the muffled cries of the city. But in his mind, all was calm. He wasn't fleeing. He was moving towards something sacred. After 40 minutes of travel, he got off at an almost abandoned station, in the heart of Bushwick, a harsh and raw neighborhood where disused warehouses stand alongside murals like cries of resistance. He crossed a narrow alleyway, which passers-by instinctively avoided. There, between two rusty containers, a fire escape creaked with every step, as if protesting the weight of its secrets. Elliot descended slowly, to a solid wooden door, cracked by time, its paint peeling. Engraved above, almost erased, a few letters still held. Dojo Hanzo, discipline, honor, silence. He pushed the door. Inside, the world was changing. The dojo smelled of waxed wood, old sweat, and the faint incense burned every morning. Decorative katanas hung on the walls. A simple altar paid homage to departed masters. The floor, covered with worn tatami mats, still vibrated with the energy of years gone by. There, in this sanctuary hidden from the modern world, Elliot became someone else. Here, he was not the mocked boy, nor the frail body pushed into the lockers. Here, he was a student. A disciple. A warrior in the making. The master, Kenji Hanzo, was a man of silence and authority. Japanese by origin, his marked skin bore the scars of 1,000 battles. His gray hair, always tied in a bun, accentuated the nobility of his bearing. But it was above all his eyes, black, piercing, motionless, that commanded respect. It expressed experience, pain, and above all, a rare peace. Hanzo spoke little. But when he did, each word fell like a stone into the still waters of the soul. Your body is a weapon, Elliot, he said in a low, calm voice, but your mind is a kingdom. You choose when to open the door. And when to leave it closed. Since the age often years, Elliot came here. Every day. Without exception. Christmas, rain, exams, fever, nothing stopped him. He swept, he scrubbed the floors, he filled the buckets with hot water before each training session. And then, he practiced. He learned their karate, for accuracy. The taekwondo, for flexibility and speed. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for mastery of the ground and joint keys. Le Kung Fu, for fluidity, grace, and connection with the breath. Muay Thai, for raw power. And even secret techniques from Southeast Asia, Indonesian silat, where the movements seemed to dance before striking. But more than the techniques, more than the blows, it was a philosophy he absorbed every night. An ancient wisdom, transmitted through gestures and silences. Because Hanzo often repeated. True power doesn't need to prove its existence. It's there, quiet, unshakable. Like the mountain. And Elliot listened. Not just with his ears. With his body. With his breathing. With every scar, every humiliation etched in his memory. That Friday, it was raining. Not a lively, joyful rain. No. A cold, slow, persistent rain that covered the windows of the high school like a veil of sadness. The drops slid in single file on the panes, like silent tears on a face we never look at. The atmosphere in the hallways was more tense than usual. The students, tired from the week, were becoming more nervous, more vocal. But Elliot, as always, remained in the background. His gaze was blank, lost somewhere between the echo of mockery and the call for silence. After gym class, the locker rooms were filled with shouts, tossed towels, and slamming lockers. A light mist rose from the communal showers, blurring the silhouettes as if in a strange dream. Elliot dressed in silence, alone on a bench in the back. But that day, Troy Beckman had other plans. Hey guys, how about we teach him a real lesson? He said, grabbing Elliot's bag. There was no hatred in his voice. Just that light, mocking tone predators take when their prey is too docile to even flee. Without warning, Troy threw the bag into the still damp showers. It landed with a thud, splashing dirty water onto the floor. Elliot didn't move. He just looked up. Darren Flint, tall and nervous, approached and pushed him violently against the tiled wall. So, are you going to say something this time? Are you going to cry a little? Come on, make us laugh. Mike Harlow, the most brutal of the trio, stepped forward with a sadistic smile. He raised his hand, ready to slap him. A good one. One of those that slaps, humiliates, strips away whatever little dignity he might still have. And there, something changed. The world seemed to slow down. The neon lights flickered. The surrounding noise faded. Elliot's heart slowed, as if he were plunging into another spacetime. He closed his eyes. He inhaled. Slowly. Deeply. Like opening a door that's been locked for too long. A breath. A click of the heel on the ground. And silence exploded. When Mike tried to strike, Elliot ducked just enough to avoid the blow. His left hand caught Mike's wrist in midair, twisting it with surgical precision. Mike cried out in surprise, not in pain yet, just a cry of incomprehension. Elliot, without hesitation, spun him around and pinned him against the bench, his arm pinned behind his back. A single movement. Fluid. Calculated. Perfect. Darren, surprised, reacted instinctively. He rushed headlong. But Elliot had already seen it coming. He stepped to the side, avoided the charge, and struck with the tibia right in the thigh, at the point of compression. Darren lost his balance, slipped on the shower water, and crashed to the floor, groaning, unable to get up. There was only Troy. The boss. The one who was always sniggering. But he wasn't laughing anymore. He took a step back, his eyes wide. What are you doing? Too late. Elliot had already moved closer. Silent. Relentless. Like a shadow that advances silently. He bent down, turned around, and swept Troy's legs with a sharp movement. The quarterback's body barely rose into the air before crashing heavily to the ground, his breath suddenly cut off. And then, nothing. 3 bodies on the ground. A frozen locker room. A total silence, almost unreal. Even the water in the shower seemed to have stopped. Around him, the other students remained petrified. No one moved. Nobody understood. Elliot straightened up. He calmly readjusted the strap of his soaked bag, now lying at his feet. He looked at the 3 executioners on the ground, out of breath, dazed, beaten without understanding how. And in a chilling calm, he said, "I'm not a punching bag. And I'm not your prey." His voice wasn't angry. It was calm. Sure. Like an ancient truth finally revealing itself. He turned on his heel and walked out. Slowly. Without looking back. The ground was still wet. But this time, he didn't slip. He walked straight. Monday morning. Friday's rain had given way to a pale sky. The wind blew against the school gates, Roosevelt High, making the dead leaves rustle like whispers of a secret that is now impossible to keep silent. Students arrived with their phones held aloft like trophies. On school buses, in the hallways, on the stairwells, the same video was playing on a loop. It showed a thin, poorly dressed teenager, alone. And in front of him, 3 self-confident boys, taller, stronger, who laughed before acting. Then, in less than 3 seconds, the world was turning upside down. Fluid movements. Unreal speed. Bodies on the ground. And Elliot Darnell, standing there, calm, as if he had just come out of meditation. Nobody understood. Is this a setup? Where did he learn that? Is he some kind of ninja or something? Even those who had mocked him, those who looked away when he was pushed, were now looking at the screen with fear and fascination. The rumor spread beyond the walls of the high school within hours. Some local media picked up the story on social media. One channel reported an unknown student with impressive fighting skills, others cried out for self-defense. Some, on the contrary, denounced excessive violence. Management, taken aback, called an emergency meeting. The main thing, Mr. Hughes, a man with a heavy stomach and a trembling voice, rubbed his temples as he read the comments on Twitter. He wanted to cover up the affair, keep calm, protect the reputation of the establishment. We need to understand what happened, and control the narrative. Otherwise, the city hall will come after us. But there was a problem. Elliot's parents were no longer there. Elliot's mother, Naomi Darnell, had died of fulminating cancer when he was 9 years old. A gentle woman, a passionate teacher, who read poems to him in the evenings and stroked his hair, whispering, "You don't have to be strong all the time. Just stay true." His father, Isaiah Darnell, a sergeant in the Marines, had gone on a mission one fall morning, and never returned. Officially missing. Elliot never spoke of him again. Since the age of 10, he lived with his grandmother, Dorothy Darnell, in a small red brick house in East Flatbush. A slim, straight woman, her skin browned by time, her eyes as clear as truth. A former Vietnam War nurse, she knew pain, fear, loss. She didn't need many words to teach strength. Every morning she read the scriptures, a steaming cup of black tea between his gnarled fingers, an open Bible on his knees. And every time Elliot came down to the kitchen, she barely looked up, but always said, "Stay straight, my boy. Even when the world wants to bend you." That Monday, Dorothy Darnell was summoned by management. She arrived at reception at exactly 11 a.m., dressed in an impeccable navy suit and a long, worn but clean coat. Her gaze was calm, almost icy. She walked with a cane, but her posture inspired more respect than pity. Upon entering the principal's office, she refused the chair offered to her. "I'd rather stand," she said. "I came for my grandson, not to sit on your excuses." Mr. Hughes tried to stammer out a diplomatic formula. "Ms. Darnell, we understand the seriousness of the incident. We simply want to prevent it from becoming too media-friendly." She stared at him, impassive. Did my grandson attack? Or did he defend himself? He reacted with extreme efficiency, let's say. What's surprising is. What surprises you, she interrupted, it's just that you've never looked at it, you saw a silent boy, so you thought he was weak. But silence, Mr. Hughes, is sometimes the refuge of the strongest. She then turned to Elliot, who was sitting in the corner of the room, his eyes lowered. "Look at me, Eli." He looked up. "You're not ashamed of anything. You kept your cool. You stood up when you needed to. And now, you're walking straight." She held out her hand to him. He takes off. And they left the office without another word. Mr. Hughes then attempted to control communications. He summoned Troy's parents, Mike and Darren. He banned phones from the classroom. He issued a curt statement on the school's website, referring to a altercation regrettable. But it was already too late. The story flowed freely, carried by visual truth. Social media needed no explanation. The videos spoke for themselves. And for the first time in years, the students looked at Elliot Darnell differently. Not with fear. But with respect. With curiosity. With a strange admiration for this boy they had never seen, until he decided to show oneself. A few months later, after years of effort and silence, Elliot Darnell graduated from high school, with honors. This success, for many, seemed improbable. For him, she was the logical consequence of an invisible discipline, forged in solitude, in the fire of the Hanzo dojo, in the silent determination of a boy that no one really saw. When it came time to choose a university, Elliot surprised everyone. He refused the grandes écoles, the prestigious universities, the scholarships offered by sports programs. He already knew what he wanted to do. He wasn't looking for fame or comfort. With the help of his grandmother Dorothy and some older members of the local community, he found a small space in a modest community center in Brooklyn, a simple room, with white walls and a light wooden floor, bathed in morning light. There he opened his own dojo. A place of peace and resistance. A refuge. He named him The Art of Silence, a tribute to his master, Kenji Hanzo, who had imparted much more than fighting techniques. Hanzo had taught him that true strength lies in control, patience, inner peace. The dojo wasn't luxurious. No expensive equipment or state-of-the-art mats. Just a space where Elliot taught. And he taught for free. He opened his doors to bullied children, angry youth, adolescents rejected by their peers, wounded souls seeking meaning, refuge, a family. He taught them to defend themselves, certainly, but above all to respect themselves, to listen to their bodies, to channel their anger, to grow up with dignity. In this dojo, the cries of pain and rage transformed into concentrated silence. Tears became new strength. At the entrance, fixed to the wall, a brushed metal plaque bore these words, engraved in sober but meaningful letters. They thought they were hitting a weak boy. They were hitting a master. These words had become his motto, his mantra. They reminded everyone that power is not measured by size, nor by the number of blows landed, but by inner strength, by the courage to get back up. 10 years passed. Elliot Darnell had become a recognized expert, not only in martial arts, but also in the psychology of resilience and conflict management. He gave lectures, participated in social programs, and advised schools and associations. A journalist from the New York Times interviewed him during a special program dedicated to those who changed the lives of disadvantaged young people. The question was asked, simple, direct. Do you remember those boys who bullied you? Elliot smiled softly, his eyes filled with serenity. I never fought them. I freed them. He paused, then concluded. That's strength. His words resonated far beyond the dojo. They spoke to all those who had known pain, fear, loneliness, but who, one day, had chosen to stand up and walk tall, silently, but with indomitable strength.